People say the darndest things, especially mother-in-laws. But why can't we ever say what we want to? Why do we have to walk on eggshells? Let's break that down today on rLounge. Up first, is it okay to swallow our own words to avoid the wrath of the mother-in-law? In-laws moving to our area, already struggling with mother-in-law's self-centeredness. My in-laws are good people and I love them, especially my father-in-law. He's an introvert like me, subtle sense of humor, doesn't like to be the center of attention, always game for adventure, and go with the flow. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, is terribly self-centered and doesn't seem to have any awareness about how her behavior affects others. I wouldn't say she's a narcissist because she's not vindictive, but she is very emotional, oblivious, and overcompensates for being self-conscious by talking about herself and her family constantly, and with an air of superiority. She's got a million allergies, afflictions that she brings up at every opportunity, talks about others' medical issues to make small talk, and always finds something to complain about. Think a combo of the Saturday Night Live character Debbie Downer and Penelope, the one-upper. Two other important notes. My sister-in-law is a lot like her mom, but recently went no contact with her, for many of the reasons I'm frustrated with mother-in-law. So there has been immense pressure on my husband and me to always make mother-in-law feel welcome and avoid pushing back at her, lest she claim that none of her kids want her around. She is triggered by the word boundaries because her daughter used the term when going no contact. My own mother is a true narcissist, vindictive, self-centered, and very manipulative, and I went no contact with her 2 years ago. So the constantly walking on eggshells with mother-in-law is triggering me after 30 years of doing it with my own mother. Father-in-law's company recently went through downsizing, so they decided to move closer to us now instead of when they retire. I'm happy we'll have family nearby, and especially for my husband and his dad to have more quality time together. I genuinely do have many interests in common with my mother-in-law and think we will have fun together every so often. However, this past week while they are here, job and house hunting has already been challenging, and I worry that my patience is going to run out very soon. I've struggled for years feeling steamrolled by her when it comes to anything about my past. I don't have the happiest childhood. Mother-in-law practically worships her parents and brags about her upbringing, even poking jabs at father-in-law's parents while putting hers on a pedestal. At holidays, she is fixated on her family's traditions, giving origin stories of every tradition, which I've already heard 10 times in the years since my husband and I got together. She hardly ever asked about my life. My childhood wasn't always happy, but it wasn't like I don't have my own memories and family traditions too. If I do talk about something I used to do, she doesn't even acknowledge what I've said before saying, "Well, I did that too." Insert reason hers was more impressive. She treats me like a baby bird who fell out of the nest that she can scoop up and I'll happily just be absorbed into her world. I'm an independent person and proud of the life I've created despite a challenging childhood, so I really struggle with her treating me this way. Prior to this, her behavior was annoying but tolerable for a week every 6 months. But now that they're moving out here, I feel like our world is being taken over by Hurricane Mother-in-Law. She acts like she's an expert in this area, despite this being her first visit here. For example, she's never been on the public transit, but she's convinced that there are no transit options to some of the jobs she's applied to, because Redfin doesn't list them. And while she claims to like it here, she also has to one-up everything. The rain is more intense where I'm from. The traffic is worse where I'm from. It gets darker earlier where I'm from. Nothing is particularly upsetting, but the constant barrage of unnecessary one-upping makes me want to scream. The last straw this week was when she interviewed for a job at my workplace. It's a big company, so we wouldn't see each other much if she took the job, but she is already acting like an expert at the company and as if it's her workplace alone. After her interview, she picked me up from work, and when I offered to show her my office, she expressed zero interest. I tried pointing out things around the corporate campus as we drove, and she said, "Oh, that's nice. So in my office they have XYZ. And then it was a monologue from her the entire drive home. She apparently bragged to all the interviewers about my husband's job, but never once mentioned that I work at this company already. If she starts working there, I feel like every conversation from now on will completely ignore the fact that I work there too, and I've been there longer." It sounds so petty when I type it out, but I really value having space that is separate from her, something we, husband and I, have created for ourselves, and now my community and likely workplace are becoming hers to invade. And I can only imagine how much worse this will get when we have kids and she lives this close to us. "I only used cloth diapers. I never let my kids play in dirt. Well, with my kids, who had 475,000 diseases that I needed to tell you about for the umpteenth time, I did this to cure them," etc. I don't want to bombard my husband with venting, but I am really struggling with this, and he has admitted he fears saying anything to rock the boat because of his sister and how sensitive his mom is. I don't want to become the witchy daughter-in-law, but I feel alone amongst my husband and father-in-law who have just learned to tolerate her to keep the peace. But I don't know how much longer I can avoid snapping at her when I've spent most of my life walking on eggshells around my own mother, swallowing my own feelings to avoid the wrath of hers. Help! Ask for help and the community comes. Whipped Pumpkin 410 starts us off. A lot to unpack here. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, but it sounds like you need to speak up and set some rules in place. You're not being petty or ridiculous. Your feelings are valid, and you are allowed to take up space in your own family, meaning you are allowed to be heard too, and your feelings and boundaries should be respected just as much as mother-in-law's. Remember that anytime someone makes you feel small, definitely have a discussion with your husband about this. It's important to get ahead of the situation and then approach your mother-in-law and any issues that arise with her as a team or united front. He is going to have to rock the boat no matter what. Your sister-in-law placing boundaries is really telling about the type of woman mother-in-law is, and it's not your job or your husband's to just placate mother-in-law's feelings or downplay how you feel simply because sister-in-law has set boundaries in place. Sister-in-law's relationship and boundaries with mother-in-law have no bearing on you or your relationship. Your husband needs to understand this and know he can't prioritize mother-in-law's feelings over yours simply because your sister-in-law made mother-in-law feel bad. Maybe if both her kids have no contact, she might learn her lesson, but it's too soon in my opinion to do that now. I'd enforce rules first. I would start with her hurtful comments, stop her in her tracks and let her know those comments bother you, or just cut her off and change the subject. Then establish rules with your husband, i.e. don't want mother-in-law visiting unannounced. Don't want mother-in-law visiting more than once every 2 weeks. Would prefer mother-in-law and you drive separately from work, etc. It would bother the hell out of me to have my mother-in-law at my workplace. I'd actively avoid her there. Do not, under any circumstances, give her or father-in-law your house key now that they live closer. You can thank me later on this one. The OP replies, thank you. Whatever conversations we have, definitely calling them rules and not boundaries. You make a great point about rocking the boat being inevitable, and that sister-in-law's actions aren't our responsibility. It was definitely my husband's immediate reflex to become extra cautious to compensate for sister-in-law going no contact. I definitely don't want to go no contact from my mother-in-law either, but I do feel there's a happy medium between that and letting her do whatever she wants, and we really need to take steps to establish those rules. 1000% agree about not giving them keys. I cannot imagine. Gullible Exchange 972 adds, you mentioned her being sensitive, but actually she is the opposite. She totally is insensitive to the feelings of virtually everyone around her, almost as if everyone else exists to play a bit of a part in her starring role. Don't wait until you blow up. Talk with your husband about how you will start to protect your lives and relationship by taking small steps to shut her down. Maybe cut her off when she starts by asking father-in-law to tell you more about his hobby, parents, whatever. Or say, yes, so you've said, and redirect the conversation. The OP replies, that's such a great point. She's emotional, not sensitive. She feels things very intensely, which in turn means everyone around her has to deal with her feeling things intensely. And when we don't want to do that, we tiptoe around. I used to think that she was really empathetic, but I realize now she just wants to appear empathetic, when in reality, she's just projecting her own emotions onto other people. For example, I had major surgery last year, did a ton of research first, asked my doctor lots of questions, and then just focused on having a realistic but positive attitude through the process. She kept talking about her own past surgeries and how horrible they were, and told me she didn't think that I was prepared for how bad it would be. Then, she insisted on driving halfway across the country to stay near us, thank God not with us, to help out. In her eyes, that was doing laundry for us, keeping me company while my husband was at work, etc. She meant well, but she completely ignored that, 1, my husband already planned to take a few days off of work, and that by week 2 of recovery, I would be able to do most things on my own. And I hate being babied. And 2, as an introvert in pain, nothing sounds more horrifying than an extrovert invading your space with anxious energy and unsolicited advice. She was focused on what she needed to do to feel good, not on what I needed to recover. She still came to visit, despite trying as hard as I could to tactfully ask her not to, but thankfully I did push hard enough to make it clear I didn't want her staying with me or helping around the house. We kept it to 2 very short visits before she went home. Own Brother 2559 chimes in, your mother-in-law sounds like she has main character syndrome. She's the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the expert on everything. The first thing I would do would be to go to HR and explain that your mother-in-law interviewed there, and you're disclosing that since she didn't. The fact that she wants to work where you do tells me she is going to take over your life. I think your feelings are totally valid, OP. Space is sacred, especially away from family. You work hard to get where you are in all aspects of your life. Try not to worry about if your mother-in-law gets the job or not. You've planted yourself firmly in the workplace. You're your own person. Chances are, if she does get the job, she'll just dig her own grave. Just focus on you and what you're doing. Talk to your husband, though. He needs to know how you're feeling. You should feel safe to talk to him about this. You don't want to tiptoe around more people than you have to. especially your husband. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around him in fear of what he might say. What do you think? And up next, give mother-in-law an inch and she'll take a mile. Trying to keep her grandsons from her. My mother-in-law is mildly no, for many reasons, but today she just sounded crazy. We see my in-laws usually once a week. Sometimes we don't because schedules don't work out. However, today she said all she wants for Christmas is to see her grandsons throughout the year, and my husband says she's made comments like this in the past, how we are trying to keep them from her if schedules don't work and we miss a week. I just laughed. I didn't know what to say in the moment, but my husband plans to call her once we lay the kids down. But seriously? She acts like we never see them and see my family all the time. We see my family maybe one weekend every 6 months because we are all a few hours apart. She says the boys don't know who she is. In reality, they just don't like her. She's too overwhelming. They love my father-in-law and sister-in-law, brother-in-law because they aren't in their face and demanding love. What should he even say? Wake up, crazy? We see you once a week? Mama Llama No Drama from the community chimes in. Time to drop it to once a month. I'm super petty. I'd be like, I'll see you when I see you. RDBFN has a thought. Agree with this. My Just Know mother-in-law used to demand our oldest at least one day a week, and it was never enough for her. She would call to tell me she was just coming to pick him up and do XYZ. Never allowed it. And added with other concerns, the once a week stopped entirely, along with no more unsupervised visits. Give an inch, they'll take a mile. Roxy McFly has this thought. He should say that he needs her to listen to what he has to say and not speak till he is done. That he doesn't appreciate how she insinuates that you guys are keeping the kids away from her, nor her guilt trip Christmas request of seeing her grandchildren throughout the year. That he is having a hard time understanding what she means when she sees the kids more than your side of the family. He needs to ask her to explain to him exactly how the kids are being kept from her, and what exactly were her expectations of seeing the kids throughout the year. Does she expect for your family to see the kids less? Does she expect you guys to cancel all plans for her? Does she expect for you guys to have free time all the time? He needs to remind her that she should appreciate how much time she does get, because as the kids get older, things will become even busier and less time will be had. That he would appreciate it if she stopped saying things are being kept away, because if she keeps up at it, she will get less time. Balanced Snail has a quick thought. Posts like these remind me that mine truly is mildly no. That crap is crazy. I have no idea how I would deal with that crap. Other people here will be more articulate and help, but please let me just validate. That crap is crazy. Sabfawada has the last comment. We have the same mother-in-law. We used to see mine 2 times a week at her place, with visits from her to our place during the week, before my son started school. Now it's once a week, thank God, but she tries to come to our place during the week. She hasn't said this to me, but to family members around her. When he was born, I hurt my back and couldn't walk, let alone take care of my 2-month-old. I stayed with my mom, and she complained to my husband that I could have brought him to her house and stayed at my mom's. My husband told her to get over herself. She's been bad-mouthing me to her other sons about not seeing her grandson enough, and they tell my husband. He tells them to back off. I wish I had some advice for you, but I really don't. I just keep my distance and just ignore the comments and let her look like a crazy, jealous person. I wouldn't even bother saying anything, OP. She's just looking to start a fight. She's being dramatic and looking for attention. It's not worth entertaining. If seeing her as much as you do already works for you and your family, don't change anything. Move on your merry way. Has your mother-in-law said anything like this before? What did you do? And thank you for joining us today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below. Until next time.